Mommy, don't go!
The black billionaire heard the cry and ran toward the children.
Mommy, don't go!
The words cut through the howling wind like a knife. Small, fragile, desperate. A little boy's voice, too soft to travel far, but powerful enough to stop a grown man in his tracks. Nathaniel Carter stopped moving. He had just stepped out of his black SUV, boots sinking slightly into the wet gravel behind the old family barn. The Montana air was bitter, sharp with pine and the coming storm. Rain clattered against the tin roof of the shed nearby, and the wind tugged at the hem of his wool coat. But that voice, quiet, pleading, pierced deeper than the cold ever could. Nathaniel turned toward the sound, the old shed. Still standing after all these years, its hinges creaking, boards warped with time and weather. He moved toward it without thinking. Instinct. Memory, something old. He yanked the door open. The smell hit him first, mildew, damp straw, and something human. Inside, 3 figures. A woman collapsed against the back wall, her lips blue and her skin pale. A little girl curled up next to her, cheeks raw from wind. And a boy, maybe 3 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, unmoving. He didn't cry. Didn't speak again, just stared. Nathaniel dropped to his knees, shrugging off his coat and wrapping it around the woman. She was ice cold, still breathing, but just barely. The boy shifted slightly as Nathaniel reached for the girl. "It's okay," Nathaniel said softly. "I'm here to help your mom." No answer. The boy didn't flinch. But he didn't run either. "What's your name, kid?" Still nothing. But his eyes never looked away. Nathaniel gently picked up the girl, cradling her against his chest, then lifted the woman. Lighter than he expected. Exhausted. Soaked to the bone. Her hair clung to her face in tangled, icy strands. "You can come with me," he told the boy. "Or you can stay, but your mom and sister need help, right now." The boy stood slowly. His tiny hand reached out, not for Nathaniel, but to grip a corner of his mother's soaked jacket. And without a word, he followed. Maggie, the estate's longtime caretaker, stood on the porch with warm towels already in hand. She didn't ask anything, just moved, efficient. Focused, afraid. Nathaniel loaded them into the back seat. Turned the heat all the way up, checked the mirror. The boy was still staring at him. Not afraid, just watching, like he already knew what people were capable of, and was deciding whether Nathaniel was one of them. Inside the main house, everything moved fast. Maggie boiled water. Brielle was laid on the guest bed under thick quilts. The girl, Amara, was changed, warmed, fed. The boy stayed close, quiet, protective. It wasn't until later that night, as Nathaniel returned with dry clothes and a mug of warm milk, that the boy finally spoke. "Her name is Brielle. She's my mom." Nathaniel knelt beside him. "What's your name?" "Elijah," the boy said, barely louder than a breath. "But she calls me Eli." Nathaniel nodded. "You did good, Eli. You kept her safe." The boy didn't reply. He just crawled onto the bed beside his sister and placed a hand on his mother's arm. By morning, Brielle stirred. Her first sensation was warmth. A soft mattress, the scent of cinnamon. Then, panic. "The kids, they're safe." The voice came from the corner. Calm, deep. "Steady." She turned. A tall black man sat in an armchair watching her. His elbows rested on his knees, his expression unreadable, but not unkind. Elijah, Amara. They're downstairs. Warm, fed. Maggie's watching them. She stared. Her voice cracked. Who are you? Nathaniel Carter, he said. You were in my shed. I found you last night. Embarrassment flushed her face. I wasn't trying to break in, You weren't breaking in, he interrupted gently. You were surviving. Silence, then her voice, brittle and low. He threw us out. His family said I didn't belong. That if I didn't leave, they'd call the police. So, I left. Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. He stood, moved to the window, let her keep talking. I was married to a man named Troy Jennings. His family never accepted me, said I was a mistake. That my kids didn't belong to him, but they do. He's their father. Her breath shook. Last week his mother told me I was done, just like that. No money. No ride, no plan. Nathaniel turned. Why come here? I didn't know where I was going, she said. I just walked, saw a light, thought maybe the barn would be warm. He exhaled. I was 6 years old when I was left in that shed, Nathaniel said softly. Foster system forgot me. Man who dropped me off never came back. I stayed there for 3 days. Brielle stared at him. Third night, someone found me, took me in. Raised me until he passed. That's why I came back here, to remember. A beat passed. That's why I heard your son. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, sacred. I don't know what you plan to do, Nathaniel said finally, but you and those kids aren't walking back into the cold. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I have nothing to give you. You already did, Nathaniel said. You gave them a mother who didn't leave. She covered her face with her hands, trembling. He didn't move to comfort her. He just stayed. Because sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is stay. The video went viral, and her past came knocking. The video lasted only 45 seconds. Shaky, taken from behind a rainy window. It showed a soaking wet woman collapsing into the arms of a tall man, 2 children clutching her coat. The caption read, Homeless Mom and Kids Rescued in Montana Storm by Billionaire Nathaniel Carter. By morning, it had 3 million views, but Brielle didn't know that. She sat on the edge of a warm bed, watching Eli and Amara breathe in perfect rhythm. Their skin no longer pale, their bodies relaxed. Then came the knock. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, flannel shirt, rolled sleeves. Come downstairs, breakfast is ready, Maggie's orders. I don't want to wake them, she whispered. We'll keep their plates warm. She followed him. In the kitchen, Maggie was flipping eggs and humming. The smell of cinnamon toast wrapped around her like an old memory. Sit down, sugar, Maggie said without turning. You look like you haven't had real food in days. Brielle sat. Nathaniel handed her a mug of coffee. Then after a pause said, Someone filmed us last night. It's online. She froze. What? It's everywhere. News outlets. Social. Some people don't know your name yet, but they know your face. Her hands tightened around the mug. I didn't ask for this. I know, Nathaniel said. But the world doesn't always wait for permission. She stared at the floor. If Troy sees it, Nathaniel's voice sharpened. Let him. She looked up. Why would you say that? Because he needs to see what he walked away from. Her lip trembled. He'll come for us now. Then let him, Nathaniel said. This time you're not alone. She stared at him, not with fear, but with disbelief. Downstairs, Amara toddled in and climbed into Brielle's lap. Nathaniel smiled. "I've got crayons in the study, little one." "Want to draw?" She nodded, and soon vanished down the hall. Brielle exhaled. She hasn't drawn since Colorado. What about Eli? He's different. Quiet. He watches, feels more than he says. A knock at the front door broke the moment. Nathaniel stiffened. He opened the door. A suited man stood with an envelope. "For Miss Brielle Matthews, from Troy Jennings' attorney." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. He took the envelope, shut the door, and handed it to her. Brielle opened it. Custody notice. Troy was suing for the children. Her breath left her. "He wants them back." Nathaniel's voice turned cold. "He wants control." "Why now?" she whispered. "Because he saw you choose freedom," Nathaniel said, "and men like him don't know how to handle that." She looked up, voice cracking. "You don't even know me." He leaned in. "I know what it's like to be abandoned, and I know what it means to survive. You're not alone anymore." She believed him. Not because of his words, but because of his eyes. Eyes that had once known the dark and refused to look away. The legal letter didn't just shake Brielle. It shattered whatever illusion of safety she had started to build. That night, after the children had fallen asleep in a room filled with soft yellow lamplight and freshly laundered sheets, Brielle sat alone by the fireplace, her hands gripping the edge of the envelope like it might still bite. The silence in the house was thick, but not oppressive. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, gentle, steady. She watched it melt against the window and wondered how long she had before Troy made his next move. Nathaniel walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. He set one down beside her and didn't speak. He never pushed, and somehow that made her want to talk more. "I thought I had more time," she said finally. Nathaniel didn't pretend to have answers. Troy's not patient. "He wants to scare you into running again." She looked over at him, eyes hollow. "He's good at that." "But you're not the same woman who walked out that door," Nathaniel said. "You're stronger now." "Am I?" Her laugh was quiet and dry. "I still get scared every time I hear a car pull into the driveway." "You've got every right to be scared," he said. "But don't confuse fear with weakness. The first time I got locked in a foster home basement, I couldn't stop shaking. The second time, I kept the light bulb from the ceiling in my pocket, like I could hold on to something bright. It didn't make the dark less terrifying, but it reminded me I was still alive." Brielle stared at him. "Why are you telling me that?" "Because you don't have to walk through this blind." "I've been through hell in a different language, but I know the terrain." She swallowed hard. "You think I can win?" Nathaniel leaned forward, his eyes sharp and steady. "I think Troy made a mistake when he underestimated you, and he's about to make a bigger one if he thinks money and power are all it takes to erase what he did." 2 days later, a black SUV pulled into the gravel driveway at Grayson Hill Farm. A tall woman in a navy pantsuit stepped out. She moved with crisp purpose, her heels clicking against the stone path. She knocked once, waited, then knocked again harder. Nathaniel opened the door. The woman flashed a badge. "I'm Special Investigator Melina Grant, Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous call alleging child endangerment and unlawful detainment." Brielle appeared behind him, her face already drained of color. Nathaniel didn't flinch. "You're not taking anyone out of this house unless you have a court order." "I don't need a removal order for a field interview," Grant said. "I can speak with the children." Now, Brielle stepped forward, trying to steady her breath. "I haven't endangered my kids. They've never been safer." "That's not my call to make," Grant replied. "It's a preliminary check. If you're telling the truth, it'll be documented." Nathaniel met Brielle's eyes. A silent question passed between them. She nodded once. Amara was curled up in the sunroom, playing with crayons. Eli sat nearby, half watching his sister, half sketching a mountain range from memory. "Can I speak to you two for a moment?" Grant asked gently. Eli looked up first. His eyes narrowed. "Are you here to take us?" he asked flatly. Grant knelt down. "No, sweetheart." "I'm just here to make sure you're okay." Amara tugged on her sleeve. "My mommy tucks us in now, and Uncle Nathaniel makes soup that smells like cinnamon." Eli didn't smile. He just handed her a drawing. It showed a house with thick walls, 2 children in the middle, and a tall man standing between them and a dark figure at the gate. Beneath it, a single line written in blocky letters. "He didn't come for us until it was too late." Grant stared at the picture for a long time. Back in the kitchen, she set down her tablet and looked at Brielle. "This isn't standard, but off the record, I've read a dozen false custody claims this month. I've never had a kid hand me a drawing that told me everything before I even asked a question." Brielle blinked back tears. "You'll get a clean report," Grant said. "But a custody trial is still coming. He's playing hardball." Brielle nodded. "Then I'll hit back harder." Grant gave a half smile. "Good. Just make sure your punches land legally." After she left, Nathaniel turned to Brielle. "Troy's not just trying to scare you. He's laying traps. You need more than defense. You need strategy." "I've never been strategic," she said quietly. "I've always just endured." "Then it's time to stop enduring." That night, Nathaniel called in a favor. A woman named Celine Rainey flew in from Chicago the next morning. Former federal litigator, known for shredding high-profile defense teams in half the time they took to prepare. She wore denim and a leather jacket instead of a suit and carried a battered briefcase that looked like it had been through a war. She sat at the kitchen table, reviewed the case file, glanced over Troy's attorney's strategy, and looked at Brielle with a half smirk. "He's arrogant. Rich, predictable. I've eaten men like him for breakfast." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "And you're sure you want to take this on?" Celine snapped the folder shut. "Your ex tried to erase you with ink. I'll write you back into every page. Let's make sure when we're done he can't even spell custody without tasting regret." But while Brielle was preparing to fight, Troy was preparing to bury her. He met with a man in the back of a cigar lounge, late 40s. Slimy smile, expensive cufflinks, the kind of man who knew how to make problems disappear for a fee. "She's got a billionaire behind her now," Troy said. "He's funding her legal team. I need something that cuts deeper." The man slid a folder across the table. "Every place she's lived, every bill she's missed, every scrap of gossip that could turn a judge's head." Troy opened it. Inside was a photograph, not of Brielle, not of the kids, but of Nathaniel, with his arm around a woman in a Navy uniform. The man whispered, "You dig deep enough into Grayson's past, you'll find ghosts. You just have to know where to bury them again." Troy smiled slowly. "Let's ruin them both." Back at the farm, Brielle stared out at the snow-covered trees, holding a hot cup of tea. Nathaniel came to her side. "You ready?" he asked. She looked up, her jaw set. "I'm ready to stop running." And for the first time, her voice didn't waver. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold ambition. Brielle Matthews stood outside the hearing room, hands clenched around a folder that held more than legal arguments. It held years of silence, bruises no one saw, and a voice she was finally ready to use. Celine Rainey stood beside her, unreadable, calm as a loaded gun. "You don't flinch," she said quietly. "Not today." Brielle nodded. though her stomach twisted like rope. Across the hallway, Troy Jennings adjusted his sleeves, pale grey suit tailored perfectly, hair slicked back like the past 5 years hadn't taught him a single thing. When his eyes met hers, he smirked, the kind of smirk that once made her second-guess herself. Not anymore. Inside, the courtroom felt colder than the wind outside. Tall windows let in pale light, but it didn't reach the corners. A few reporters sat in the back. Judge Naomi Park presided, sharp-browed, serious, but fair. Troy's attorney stood first. Polished. Practiced. Your Honor, my client requests joint custody, not out of hostility, but genuine concern. Miss Matthews removed the children without legal notification and is now residing on private property, owned by an unrelated male. He let that last phrase hang in the air, like a slow-moving insult. She is isolating the children, he continued, from stability, from structure, and from a father who wishes to be involved. Celine rose smoothly. Ms. Matthews left because she and her children were subject to repeated emotional and psychological abuse. We will provide medical reports, neighbor testimony, and recorded communications proving Mr. Jennings' pattern of intimidation and neglect. And the so-called unrelated male, Mr. Nathaniel Carter, is a respected businessman, the man who physically rescued Ms. Matthews and her children from a storm that could have killed them. Judge Park scribbled a note. Proceed. Both sides will be heard. Brielle took the stand first. She spoke softly at first, but her voice didn't shake. She described the night Troy's family forced her out with nothing but a bag and 2 sleeping children. She described snow, the shed, the way her daughter whimpered in her sleep, the silence in Eli's eyes. Troy crossed his arms, face still, but the way his foot tapped against the floor betrayed something boiling beneath. Then came the letter. Celine handed it to Brielle with a small nod. Please read this aloud. It was written in blocky pencil strokes, Eli's handwriting. When I get big, I'll be strong like Mommy, because when I cried in the cold, she didn't leave. And when I couldn't talk, she didn't make me. She just held me. Brielle's voice cracked. She just held me until I knew I wasn't alone. There was a pause. Someone in the back sniffled. Another leaned forward slightly. Troy's attorney quickly stood. Your Honor, we move to exclude emotional testimony not directly relevant to legal custody fitness. Judge Park didn't even glance up. Motion denied. Then came the turn. Nathaniel Carter took the stand. Troy's lawyer objected. Irrelevant, inflammatory. But the judge allowed it. Nathaniel's voice was calm but steady. I was the one who found them. In a shed. In a storm. Unconscious, hypothermic. No one should survive what that woman survived. But she did, because she didn't leave her children. That's what survival looks like. Not money, not press statements, but staying. He paused. I know what it's like to wait in that cold for someone who never comes. I was that child. And I can tell you right now, Eli and Amara, they were never alone. She never left. Troy's face turned a shade paler. Then Celine stood, holding a slim folder. Your Honor, we have additional evidence. Records obtained via private investigation confirm Mr. Jennings hired an unlicensed party to surveil Miss T. Matthews without her consent. This surveillance included footage of the minor children and constitutes a breach of privacy. She handed the folder to the judge. Furthermore, we are filing for an immediate restraining order following this hearing. Troy jolted to his feet. She's lying! She left because she was cheating with that man! He pointed at Nathaniel, face twisted. Mr. Jennings, Judge Park said firmly. Sit down. Troy didn't. Not right away. He stepped forward like he might throw more words into the fire. A bailiff stepped into his path. He backed down. And that was it, the turning point. Judge Park looked down at her bench, then slowly at Brielle, then at Troy. Custody is not ownership. It is not leverage. It is not an ego war. It is a responsibility. Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't have to. Mr. Jennings has demonstrated recklessness, intimidation, and disregard for the emotional safety of these children. Full physical and legal custody is hereby granted to Ms. Brielle Matthews. All visitation rights are suspended pending psychological evaluation and further court review. She signed. The gavel stayed still, but the silence that followed felt like thunder. Brielle sat motionless. Celine touched her shoulder gently. No celebration, just quiet victory. Outside, snow began to fall again, softly this time. In the parking lot, Eli tugged at Brielle's sleeve. "Are we going home now?" he whispered. She smiled, tears welling. "Yes, baby, we're going home." The warmth of the courthouse victory hadn't fully sunk in when the first warning arrived. It came in the form of a text message, unsigned and unnumbered. "You think it's over. It's not." Brielle stared at it in the kitchen of the Grayson farmhouse, one hand still wrapped around a coffee mug, the other trembling just slightly. The smell of pancakes filled the room. Amara and Eli were laughing in the next room over, building a cardboard castle out of shipping boxes Nathaniel had saved from deliveries. She didn't show the message to Nathaniel. Not yet. Not because she didn't trust him, but because some things needed to settle in her chest before they reached the air. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of old bruises, blue-gray and heavy. Maggie paused in the doorway, dish towel in one hand, watching Brielle fix the bookshelf near the fireplace. "Heard from the lawyer?" she asked softly. Brielle shook her head. "Not since the ruling." Maggie's gaze lingered. "People like Troy don't let go because it's fair. They let go when it's no longer useful. Or when someone else reminds them they're not untouchable," Brielle said without looking up. That evening, Nathaniel returned from a run into town. His mood was light, arms full of groceries, Amara clinging to his leg the moment he walked in. But Brielle noticed the shift. His smile was a half-second too late. His eyes flicked once, just once, toward the window behind her. "What happened?" she asked when the kids had gone upstairs. He opened his wallet and slid out a photo. It was a printed still from a traffic camera, a black sedan, license plate partially obscured, parked across from the clinic downtown. A man inside with a long-lens camera. "Troy," she guessed. Nathaniel nodded. Or someone paid by him. What was he watching? Nathaniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Later that night, while the house creaked and settled around them, Brielle sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers Celine had left behind. Custody was secure, for now. But threats didn't always follow court orders. Nathaniel returned with a laptop, his expression tighter now. "I pulled up Troy's shell companies. 2 weeks ago, he moved some funds into an account tied to a private security firm." She blinked. "What kind of firm?" Nathaniel hesitated. "The kind that offers recovery services." The words dropped like stones. "You think he's going to try and take them?" she asked, voice low. Nathaniel leaned across the table. "I think he wants to scare you into running. Or corner you into a mistake. I won't run." "I know," he said quietly. "But we need to be ready if he forces a confrontation." The next day, Maggie took the kids to the community library, giving Brielle space to breathe. But the house didn't feel peaceful. It felt watched. She went through every door, checked every window. At the back of the property, near the barn, she spotted something strange, tracks in the snow. Deep and recent, not hers, not Maggie's. When Nathaniel returned that evening, she showed him. He followed the tracks silently, crouched near the edge of the tree line, and picked something up. A cigarette butt. Still warm. "He's not waiting," Nathaniel said. "He's already circling." That night, Brielle slept with a baseball bat by the bed. It was Nathaniel who broke the silence first. "You don't have to carry this alone, you know." "I'm not," she replied, glancing at the door where Eli and Amara were fast asleep. "I mean the fear. The weight. The instinct to always be ready for something awful." Brielle's voice cracked. "But awful keeps happening." "I know," he said. "But maybe, just maybe, this time you don't have to fight it on your own." She turned to him then. In his eyes, she saw the boy he once was, and the man who stood by her now. No savior, no superhero, just someone who stayed when others left. The moment was shattered by a noise, a loud knock, 3 heavy bangs on the front door. They froze. Nathaniel moved first, stepping toward the hall, motioning for Brielle to stay back. He peeked through the curtain and cursed under his breath. "It's him!" Brielle's heart kicked into her throat. Troy Jennings stood on the porch in the dark, hair soaked from the cold drizzle outside, wearing a smirk and holding a court document in one hand. Nathaniel opened the door only an inch. "You're trespassing." "I'm delivering a formal notice," Troy said calmly, waving the paper. "Filed a motion to appeal custody. You'll be served in the morning, but I figured..." "Why wait?" Nathaniel didn't move. "Leave." But Troy stepped closer. "You really think you're going to replace me, man? You think a couple of warm dinners and bedtime stories makes you their father?" From behind Nathaniel, Brielle's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "No. What makes him their father is the fact that he never once made them feel afraid." Troy's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this, Brielle." "Courts change their minds, people flip. All it takes is one mistake." Nathaniel opened the door a fraction more. "Then I suggest you go back to your lawyer and pray we don't show them this footage." He pointed to the camera above the porch light. Troy's expression cracked. "You've been recording?" "Since the custody hearing," Nathaniel said. "Smile for the judge." Troy dropped the smirk. He stepped back, rain drenching his shoulders, and tossed the document onto the steps. Then he turned and walked away. Brielle didn't move for a long time, not until the sound of tires on gravel faded completely. She looked at Nathaniel. "What do we do now?" He reached for her hand. "We don't blink. We protect them. We protect each other, and when the next move comes, we hit back harder." And in that silence, Brielle knew. This wasn't the end of a fight. This was the beginning of one she would no longer fight alone. The court motion Troy dropped on the porch didn't hit like a threat. It hit like a countdown, a timer ticking beneath their feet, hidden by normalcy. The next morning, Brielle woke early, earlier than usual, and lay in bed listening to the hum of the heater, the creak of the wooden walls, the steady breath of her children in the next room. Everything was still, but her mind was sprinting. The appeal hearing was scheduled in just under 3 weeks. But that was only part of the equation. Nathaniel knew it. She knew it. Troy wouldn't wait for court to strike. He'd do what men like him always did. Try to control the narrative before it reached a room he couldn't dominate. And right now, that narrative was fragile. Brielle had custody, but Troy had money, influence, and the instinct to twist anything into leverage. By noon, the local news ran a story. Headline: Philanthropist's family battle. Custody dispute raises questions about child welfare. The photo they used wasn't recent. It was one of Brielle from 2 years ago, eyes swollen, hair disheveled, leaving a hospital with Eli wrapped in her arms. There was no mention of the bruised rib, the police report quietly buried, or the fact that Darlene had signed her out without consent. Nathaniel slammed the laptop shut when he saw it. "They're painting you unstable," he said, jaw clenched. "It's starting." Later that afternoon, Brielle received a call from her old job at the local arts center. Her former supervisor sounded apologetic. Polite, cold. "We've received some concerns from a donor. Just wondering if you'd be open to clarifying some details about your situation." "What details?" Brielle asked, though she already knew. A pause. Then the kind that wraps around a lie to make it sound professional. "Just questions about the living environment, your recent transition." "You mean leaving a man who endangered my children?" "I'm not saying that," the voice replied quickly. "We just need to be careful." "There's media interest." Brielle hung up before she could say something she'd regret, or maybe something she wouldn't. That night, Nathaniel found her sitting on the porch steps, arms wrapped around herself, eyes glazed. "I know what this looks like," she said. "What they're doing." "They want you to flinch," he replied. "They want to remind you how fast they can turn everything you've built into sand. But this time, I'm not standing on it alone." Nathaniel didn't respond. He just sat beside her, watching the wind move through the trees like it was trying to whisper something old. The next morning, Brielle made a call of her own. "Celine," she said when the attorney answered. "I want to file a counterclaim, not just custody. I want full termination of his parental rights." "That's a bold move," Celine said. "It will provoke him." "I'm counting on it," Brielle said. By the weekend, Troy responded in kind. An emergency petition for psychological evaluation. Filed in another county, claimed Brielle exhibited paranoia and unstable behavior, citing vague emails and heavily edited clips of phone calls taken out of context. But there was one mistake. The petition listed a date Brielle had been in another city entirely, speaking at a local women's shelter. Maggie had driven her. There were photos. Witnesses, video. It was a small crack. But it was all they needed. Nathaniel reached out to a friend from law school, a digital forensic expert. Within 48 hours, they traced the video clip to a tampered recording sent from an IP address inside Darlene Jennings' gated community, not a lawyer's office. Celine filed an emergency motion to strike the petition. The judge didn't just agree. She opened a formal review into Troy's use of falsified evidence. For the first time, the tide shifted. And Troy panicked. Late one night, while Brielle was settling Amara into bed and Eli lay curled on the couch reading, Nathaniel got a call. He stepped outside to take it. When he came back, his face was pale. "That was Andre Bell, a contact I used to work with. He says Troy's desperate, called in favors from people who don't ask questions, people who owe him." Brielle's stomach sank. "What kind of favors?" "Surveillance teams, under-the-table custody retrieval. Illegal but hard to trace." "Like a kidnapping?" she whispered. Nathaniel nodded. They sat in silence for a moment, the truth thudding in their chests like a second heartbeat. "I'll fix the security system tonight," Nathaniel said. "Double the cameras, motion sensors on the back gate." "And what about when we're not home?" she asked. "We don't leave them out of sight." Not for 1 second. But the real shift came 3 days later. A woman showed up on the property. Not the type you expect in a rural town like New Crestwood. She wore a crisp black blazer, boots without a speck of dirt, and mirrored sunglasses that gave away nothing. She said her name was Renee Mathers, private investigator, hired by Troy. But she didn't come with threats. She came with something else.
Look, I've worked for men like him, she said, hands open. I've seen what they do when the courts don't rule their way, what they tell themselves to sleep at night.
But this one, he's on the edge. He's going to do something that'll hurt everyone. Then walk away, Brielle said. I already did, Renee replied. But I'm not leaving empty-handed. What do you want? Nathaniel asked. A chance to even the scale. You want his pressure points. I've got them. Bank accounts, old settlements. Quiet payouts, including one to a former girlfriend in Houston. I'll give it to you. Pro bono. Why? Brielle asked, her voice low, cautious. Renee hesitated. Because the look in your kid's eyes when I watched that hearing footage. That kind of fear? I've seen it before. In the mirror. She left a flash drive. No names, no trail, just truth. That night, Brielle opened the files and saw everything. Wire transfers to women. Non-disclosure agreements. Payment trails to silence. One of the women, Tiffany Blake, was still reachable. Living in Seattle. Celine called her the next day, and Tiffany, bless her brave soul, agreed to testify. The narrative was crumbling. Troy's empire of appearances began to rot from the inside, but he wasn't finished. That night, while Maggie slept upstairs and the kids were finally at peace, someone threw a brick through the front window, wrapped in duct tape. Inside, a note. You think you've won? Watch what happens next. Nathaniel stood at the doorway, holding the brick, his eyes dark. Brielle picked up the note with steady fingers. No more hiding, she said. We go on the offensive, Nathaniel replied. And this time, we bring the whole house down. The storm wasn't coming anymore. It was here, and they weren't afraid. The morning after the brick, everything felt off. The air was heavy. Maggie made stronger coffee. Nathaniel checked every window latch twice. Brielle didn't say much. She just packed the kids' bags with their favorite things. Not because she planned to run, but because she knew, instinctively, that they had to be ready for anything. The local police had been polite, even sympathetic. But when asked about patrols or protection, the answer came back in polite legalese. No clear evidence, no threat on record, nothing actionable. Brielle laughed bitterly when she heard it. So what? We wait until they come through the door? Nathaniel didn't answer. He just loaded a shotgun and placed it behind the pantry door. But fate had other plans. Later that day, a letter arrived. Not from Troy. From the courthouse. The judge had accepted the motion to admit new evidence. Tiffany Blake's testimony was officially on record. And more than that, Judge Whitley was reopening the original 2019 case involving Brielle's hospital visit, the one quietly dismissed. This isn't just about custody anymore, Celine said over the phone. If this goes to full review and they prove witness tampering, Troy could face criminal charges. A beat. You should prepare for him to lose control. And that's exactly what happened. 2 days later, Troy Jennings showed up at the farm. No SUV, no lawyers, just him. In the flesh. Wearing a charcoal suit, hair slicked back like it was still 5 years ago, and he hadn't already been stripped of his mask. Maggie spotted him first from the kitchen window. Brielle, she said sharply. Don't panic, but he's here. Nathaniel was already moving. Calm, measured steps toward the porch, but Brielle stopped him. No, she said. This is mine. She stepped outside, arms folded, eyes clear. Troy stood on the gravel, holding a single sheet of paper in his hand. You're going to regret this, he said. I'm giving you one chance. To do what? Brielle asked. Pretend your name still means something? He held up the paper.
Settlement offer, walk away. You keep the kids. I get visitation. No court. No public trial. And you get to keep your reputation, she said, not even bothering to take the paper. I'm offering peace. You don't know what peace is, she replied, stepping closer. You only understand silence, the kind you buy or bully your way into. I made mistakes, he said, voice rising. But this? You're weaponizing our history. You're turning me into a monster. Brielle's voice didn't waver. You're doing that all by yourself. At that moment, Eli appeared in the doorway, quiet, watchful. Like always. Troy turned to him. Eli. Son. But the boy didn't move, didn't blink, didn't respond. And that was worse than anything else. Troy's jaw tightened. I'll bury this place, he hissed, voice low enough for only Brielle to hear. You think one judge matters? I have people, I always have people. Brielle leaned in, her tone like a blade. Then I hope they're ready to go down with you. Nathaniel stepped out now, slowly, standing between Brielle and the driveway. Troy stared at him. You think you're the hero here? You think she picked you? Nathaniel didn't flinch. I think she picked herself, and that's why you lost. Troy didn't say another word. He turned, got in his car, and peeled away, spraying gravel behind him like it meant something. That night, Celine sent a message. We're on the docket for emergency review. Monday morning. Judge Whitley herself. Brielle sat at the kitchen table long after the kids went to bed. Nathaniel joined her, setting 2 mugs between them. You know it's going to get uglier before it gets better, he said. Brielle nodded. I'm not afraid of ugly. I lived with it for years. She looked up at him. But I am tired. Then lean, he said gently. You don't have to carry all of this alone. But she shook her head. No. Not yet. I need to walk into that courtroom and look every person who ever doubted me in the eye. And not blink. He reached across the table and took her hand. You won't have to blink. Because we'll be right there. She smiled, but not softly, not weakly. It was the smile of someone who had already survived the storm and now stood ready to become the storm. Monday came fast. The courthouse steps were crowded. Press, protesters, supporters holding signs that read, Believe Mothers and Justice for Brielle. Inside, the energy was electric. Judge Whitley entered the chamber with the quiet presence of someone used to taming chaos. She didn't waste time. We are convened today to examine evidence brought forth by the petitioner, Brielle Matthews, regarding prior domestic abuse, forgery, and obstruction of justice in the matter of Jennings Fifth. Matthews. Troy sat at the defendant's table, jaw clenched, suit perfect. But the cracks were showing. Celine stood first. Your Honor, we submit into record the original hospital report from April 2019, alongside 3 sworn statements, from the attending nurse, from Ms. Tiffany Blake regarding prior behavior from Mr. Jennings, and from the forensics expert confirming forgery of medical consent documents. Judge Whitley scanned the files. Then turned to Troy. Mr. Jennings, do you wish to respond? Troy stood slowly. His voice was calm, practiced. These allegations are part of a coordinated effort to discredit me. I maintain that Ms. Matthews left voluntarily, that the injuries were incidental, and that the consent was given at the time. Do you deny contacting Ms. Blake after she agreed to testify? Troy blinked. I don't recall making direct contact. Celine rose again. Your Honor, we have a voicemail transcript from Mr. Jennings to Ms. Blake. The message included veiled threats. Judge Whitley raised a brow. Mr. Jennings,
This is your last opportunity. Deny it clearly, or I will take it as obstruction. Troy's eyes flicked to his lawyer. His lawyer stared at the table, and that was it. The moment it all broke, the courtroom fell into silence so thick it made air feel heavy. Judge Whitley leaned forward. Mr. Jennings, based on the evidence submitted, I am ruling an immediate suspension of all parental rights. Your visitation privileges are terminated indefinitely. Furthermore, this court is forwarding the case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into witness intimidation, document forgery, and perjury. Troy's face went white. Darlene, sitting behind him, reached out, but he didn't take her hand. He just sat there. Silent, defeated, forgotten. Brielle didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She just exhaled. Long, slow, and free. Later, on the steps of the courthouse, a reporter asked her how it felt. She looked toward the sunlight and answered, "It feels like the beginning." Because justice isn't the end. It's the door you open so others can walk through too. And behind her, Nathaniel, Eli, and Amara stood in the light, unshaken, whole. The days after the hearing passed in a strange golden hush. It wasn't quiet exactly, not with Amara racing through the fields chasing Eli, or Maggie humming gospel songs while stirring collard greens, or Nathaniel fixing the screen door for the third time because Eli kept slamming it open in excitement. But it was the kind of hush that comes after a storm, when the house still smells like rain and you're not sure whether to laugh or cry, so you do both. Brielle sat on the back porch watching the kids draw chalk suns and crooked hearts on the concrete. Her court-issued custody certificate lay folded in her lap. Not because she needed to see it again, but because touching it still reminded her it was real. She hadn't spoken to Troy since the ruling. No calls, no messages. His legal team had gone silent. Rumors swirled about indictments and federal interest in his financial records. But for Brielle, the most satisfying justice wasn't the prison he might face, it was the silence. The kind where his voice no longer owned space in her head. Nathaniel came up behind her, a glass of iced tea in each hand. "You haven't stopped moving since Monday," he said. "I don't know how to be still," she admitted, laughing softly. "I've been in survival mode so long, I don't know what comes next." He sat beside her, nudging her shoulder. "Then maybe don't think about next just yet. Just be here." She looked at him, at the man who had once opened a shed door and changed everything. "Why did you come out there that night?" "Really?" Nathaniel stared across the fields. "Because when I was 6, I cried in that same darkness, and no one came. And when I heard that voice, Eli's voice, I couldn't let it happen again. I didn't know who he was. I just knew. The cry was the same." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Brielle asked quietly, "And what do you hear now?" He turned to her, eyes steady. "A home." She blinked, and a tear slipped down her cheek, not from pain, but from recognition. Later that afternoon, Maggie brought out a surprise. A wooden plaque, hand-carved by Nathaniel and Eli, painted by Amara. It read, "No one gets left behind." They mounted it beside the shed. That night, the family gathered around a bonfire in the yard. Neighbors brought folding chairs, peach cobbler, and stories. Some had seen the news coverage. Others had followed the case from the beginning. A few just came because they'd heard the farm had found its light again. A young mother approached Brielle quietly as the fire cracked. "My sister is going through something similar," she said. "I didn't think people like us ever got justice. But your story gave her hope." Brielle smiled softly. "Tell her she doesn't have to win in one day. Just survive one more. That's how I started."
Before the woman walked away, she asked, "So what now?"
"What will you do next?" Brielle looked at Nathaniel, then at the kids curled under blankets near the fire. "I'll build something they can stand on," she said. "Something no one can take from them." The next morning, they painted the shed. Bright yellow, soft teal, a little messy, but beautiful. Brielle stood with a brush in her hand and looked up at the fresh wood. She didn't see the place where she almost collapsed anymore. She saw a beginning, a doorway. When Eli finished painting a crooked sun beside the door, he looked at her and whispered, "This is where the magic started, right?" She nodded. "Right here." That week, Brielle got an invitation to speak at a local women's shelter, then a community college, then a podcast. Her inbox flooded with messages from mothers, daughters, even fathers, people who saw themselves in her story, who had whispered, "Mommy, don't go," in one way or another. She didn't become famous. She became something better, seen. Months passed. One summer afternoon, Amara stood on a small wooden stage in the town library, holding a drawing of her family. 4 figures, one taller, one with curly hair, 2 little ones. Underneath, the words, "We don't run anymore." The audience clapped. Brielle, from the back row, clutched Nathaniel's hand. "You're crying," he teased gently. "I'm alive," she replied. And that was the truth of it. Not that justice had erased the scars, but that it gave her space to breathe again. That her children would never again feel the cold floor of a storage shed while the world turned away. And that someone, somewhere, would hear her story and decide not to give up. Because in a world where injustice wears 1,000 faces, sometimes all it takes is one person listening when a child says, "Mommy, don't go." Sometimes that's how the healing begins. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of something buried or gave you hope for something better, then let it live. Share it. Pass it on. Let others know they're not invisible, not voiceless, not broken beyond repair. This was the story of Brielle Matthews. Of Eli, of Amara, of a man who opened the right door at the right moment, and of a truth that can't be silenced anymore. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories, more light in the dark, and more doors that finally open. We're not done yet. And we're not leaving anyone behind.